I remember that moment with perfect clarity. She stood on that stage, holding the microphone I'd dreamed of, presenting the plan I'd spent 6 months building. And when the applause erupted, I just smiled, because none of them had realized yet. Today was the last day their precious system would ever work properly. 3 hours ago, I'd set everything in motion, in 17 minutes, while she basked in stolen glory. 342 files would vanish like they'd never existed at all. My name is Natalie Shaw, and I've always preferred algorithms to people. At 29, I'd spent the last 4 years buried in the data caves of Ridgecore Analytics, a mid-tier tech company in Minneapolis that promised innovation but delivered mediocrity wrapped in corporate buzzwords. While my colleagues networked over craft beer and pretended to care about each other's weekend plans, I found solace in patterns, probabilities, and the elegant logic of clean code. The office sprawled across the 14th floor of a glass tower that caught the morning sun and turned it into a greenhouse by noon. Open floor plan, they called it. Collaborative workspace designed to foster creativity. In reality, it was a fishbowl where everyone watched everyone else while pretending not to. I'd claimed a corner desk, as far from the ping-pong table and the ideation station as possible. 3 monitors formed a barrier between me and the rest of the world, displaying streams of consumer data that told stories more honest than any water cooler conversation. For 6 months, I'd been working on something special. Not the routine quarterly reports or the predictive models that helped our clients squeeze another 2% from their marketing budgets. This was different, revolutionary, even. An AI algorithm that could adapt to consumer behavior in real time, learning and evolving faster than anything currently on the market. I called it Project Mercury in my private files, swift, intelligent, transformative. Every evening after the office emptied, I'd stay behind, headphones on, lost in the beautiful complexity of neural networks and machine learning frameworks. The janitor, Roberto, would nod as he passed with his cart, the only acknowledgement I needed. These late hours weren't logged, weren't billable, weren't even officially sanctioned. But they were mine. I'd been careful, or so I thought. The project lived in a folder buried 3 levels deep in our shared drive, labeled with the kind of boring nomenclature that repelled casual browsers: Q3 data, cleanup, archived 2024. Inside, months of research, thousands of lines of code, testing data that proved the concept worked. It wasn't ready for prime time yet, but it was close. Another month, maybe 2, and I'd have something that could change everything. The company had this ridiculous innovation contest every year, Ridgecore's Future Forward Challenge, complete with a $50,000 prize and a fast track to senior management I'd never entered before. Watching my colleagues present their half-baked ideas while executives nodded sagely at PowerPoints full of meaningless jargon made my skin crawl. But this year would be different. Project Mercury deserved that stage, that recognition, that vindication for all the nights I'd chosen code over sleep. I should have known something was wrong when Lana started being nice to me. Lana Grayson, our marketing team lead, who usually looked through me like I was office furniture. Suddenly she was bringing me coffee, asking about my weekend plans, lingering by my desk with questions about data stuff that seemed oddly specific. "You're always here so late," she'd said one Thursday evening, perching on the edge of my desk in her designer heels. "Working on anything interesting?" I'd minimized my screens reflexively. "Just cleaning up some old datasets. Nothing exciting." She'd laughed, that practice sound that probably worked on clients and executives. "You're too modest, Natalie. I bet you've got all kinds of brilliant things hidden in that brain of yours." The compliment felt wrong, like wearing someone else's clothes. Lana had been at Ridgecore for 5 years, climbing the ladder with a combination of charm, strategic friendships, and an uncanny ability to take credit for collaborative efforts. We'd worked on a few projects together, and I'd learned to document everything, CC the right people, cover my bases. But I'd never considered her a threat. She was marketing, I was data, different worlds. How naive I'd been, how stupidly, dangerously naive. The revelation came on a Tuesday morning, delivered via a company-wide email with a subject line that made my coffee turn to acid in my stomach. Congratulations to our Future Forward Challenge finalists. I hadn't even submitted yet. The deadline was still 2 weeks away. But there it was. Lana's name in bold, her professional headshot smiling from the announcement. And the project description, revolutionary AI-driven consumer behavior prediction model, might as well have been copied from my own notes. Because it was. My hands shook as I clicked through to the detailed submission. She'd been clever about it, I'd give her that. The core concept was mine. The algorithm structure, the testing methodology, even some of the variable names I'd used, but she'd wrapped it in marketing speak, added glossy visualizations, and most critically, filed off the rough edges that marked it as a work in progress. She'd presented my unfinished symphony as if it were ready for Carnegie Hall. The SharePoint logs told the story. Multiple accesses to my boring folder over the past 3 weeks, always after hours, always when I wasn't logged in. She'd been patient, downloading pieces at a time, probably reconstructing the project on her own machine. The shared drive I'd thought was secure because of its mundane camouflage had been my biggest vulnerability. I sat at my desk for 20 minutes, staring at the screen, watching my colleagues react to the announcement with emoji reactions and congratulatory comments. Knew you had it in you, Lana. Game changer. Can't wait to see the presentation. The rage came in waves. First, white hot and blinding, making me want to march straight to her office and demand justice. Then cold, calculating. The kind that made me close my emails and open a new browser window to review Ridgecore's intellectual property policies. Finally, a numb disbelief that settled over me like fog. She found me in the bathroom an hour later, touching up her lipstick while I splashed cold water on my face. "Oh, Natalie!" Her voice pitched high with false surprise. "Did you see the announcement? I'm so nervous about the presentation round." I met her eyes in the mirror. That's my project. The lipstick paused for just a moment before continuing its smooth glide. I'm sorry, what? The AI algorithm, the consumer behavior model. You took it from my files. She capped the lipstick with a precise click and turned to face me fully. Natalie, I'm not sure what you're implying, but I've been working on this project for months. We've all been exploring AI applications. It's hardly a unique concept. The variable names, the testing parameters, the neural network architecture, they're all mine. Her expression shifted to one of practiced concern. Are you feeling okay? I know you've been working late, maybe too much stress. Besides, she leaned against the counter, casual as a cat. Didn't we discuss some AI concepts a few weeks ago? I remember you sharing some interesting ideas about behavioral prediction. I thought we were brainstorming together. The gaslighting was so smooth, so professional, I almost doubted myself. Almost. We never discussed anything. You accessed my files without permission. Files in the shared drive? The one everyone has access to? She shook her head sadly. Natalie, if you had concerns about confidentiality, you should have used private storage. But honestly, accusing me of stealing, that's quite serious. And without any proof. She let the threat hang in the air between us. Proof. What proof did I have? SharePoint logs that showed she'd accessed a shared folder she had every right to access. Similar code that she could claim was convergent development. My word against hers, the antisocial data analyst versus the beloved team lead. I'd be careful about making accusations, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. Especially baseless ones. That kind of behavior could be seen as problematic, hostile work environment, and all that. She swept past me, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and implied threats. At the door, she paused. Good luck with your submission, if you're planning one, though I'd understand if you wanted to focus on something different to avoid any appearance of copying. You know. The door closed with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in my chest. The next 2 weeks became a masterclass in corporate gaslighting. I tried the proper channels first. My direct manager, Tom, listened with the kind of patient expression reserved for difficult children. Natalie, these are serious allegations. Do you have any concrete evidence, emails, documentation showing the work was originally yours? I showed him my local timestamps, the development history, even some of the handwritten notes I'd made during the initial planning phase. He nodded thoughtfully, then suggested I might be misremembering the timeline, and reminded me about the company's commitment to collaborative innovation. HR was worse. Sandra from People Operations scheduled a meeting that turned into an interrogation about my work relationships and whether I felt I was integrating well with the team culture. She used phrases like perception management and assuming positive intent, while typing notes that I couldn't see but could guess. Employee showing signs of paranoia. Possible performance improvement plan needed. The Whisper network activated faster than our data servers. Conversations stopped when I entered the break room. Slack messages dried up. Even Roberto started taking different routes with his cleaning cart, avoiding my corner of the office. I'd become the problem employee, the one who couldn't handle competition, who cried theft when someone else had a good idea. Lana, meanwhile, flourished. She held impromptu innovation sessions where she magnanimously shared her insights about AI and consumer behavior. She scheduled meetings with the C-suite to discuss implementation strategies. She even started a mentorship program for junior employees interested in crossing functional boundaries, using my work to build her empire. The insomnia started on day 3. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every moment where I could have done something different, protected my work better, been less trusting, more political. My apartment became a prison of takeout containers and unwashed coffee mugs as I oscillated between fevered plans for vindication and crushing despair. By the second week, I'd stopped eating regular meals. The face in my bathroom mirror looked hollow, with dark circles that no amount of concealer could hide. My work performance slipped. How could I focus on routine analysis when my life's work was being paraded around the office by a thief in Louboutin? The breaking point came during an all-hands meeting. Lana presented a sneak peek of her Future Forward project, and I watched my algorithms dance across the screen in her PowerPoint. She'd even used my color scheme for the data visualizations, the specific palette I'd spent hours perfecting because it was easier on the eyes during long coding sessions. The key insight, she said, clicking to a slide that contained a direct quote from my documentation, is that consumer behavior isn't just predictable, it's programmable. We're not just reading the patterns, we're writing them. My own words, delivered with her confident smile to rapturous applause. I left the meeting early, claiming a migraine. It wasn't a lie, my head felt like it might explode from the pressure of unscreamed accusations. In the bathroom, I gripped the sink and stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the person looking back. When had I become so powerless, so invisible? That's when the plan began to form, not in a flash of inspiration, but slowly, like frost creeping across a window. If the system wouldn't give me justice, I'd have to code my own. I spent that night mapping out every system I had access to, every folder, every database, every shared resource that contained pieces of Project Mercury. Ridgecore's IT security was designed to keep external threats out, not to monitor internal access by authorized employees. My credentials opened doors that should have been locked, revealed vulnerabilities that existed because no one expected malice from within. The beautiful irony was that Lana's theft had created a perfect trail. Every file she'd accessed, every version she'd downloaded, every derivative work she'd created. All of it linked back to my original work through metadata she hadn't thought to scrub. She'd been so focused on stealing the crown jewels, she hadn't noticed she was leaving fingerprints all over the vault. I started a new notebook that night, not for code or algorithms, but for something more primal. A list of every file, every access point, every digital thread that connected my work to hers. By dawn, I had cataloged 342 files across 17 different folders: training data, test results, code libraries, documentation. even the email drafts where I'd tried to explain the concept to myself in plain English. 342 files that told the true story of Project Mercury. 342 files that Lana needed to maintain her lie. 342 files that could disappear as quickly as my recognition had. The woman in the mirror smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. It wasn't a nice smile. The next 2 weeks required a performance worthy of an Oscar. I arrived at work on time, completed my assigned tasks, attended meetings with a placid smile. I even congratulated Lana when she announced she'd been selected as a finalist for the presentation round. The words tasted like battery acid, but I delivered them with convincing sincerity. "Thanks, Natalie," she said, her hand briefly touching my shoulder in a gesture that might have seemed friendly to observers. "That means a lot, especially from someone as talented as you." The condescension dripped like honey, sweet and suffocating. Every evening, I stayed late, nothing unusual there. But instead of working on new projects, I was creating something far more intricate, a digital time bomb. The deletion script had to be perfect. Too simple, and it might leave recoverable traces. Too complex, and it might trigger security protocols. I needed surgical precision, not brute force. I wrote the code in segments, testing each function on dummy files in my personal folders. The script would run in waves, starting with the most recent files and working backwards, mimicking the natural decay of abandoned projects. It would preserve just enough infrastructure to avoid immediate system alerts while gutting the essential content that made Project Mercury valuable. The beauty was in the timing. I scheduled the script to execute during the Future Forward presentation event, 90 minutes when every executive, manager, and IT staff member would be packed into the main conference hall. Phones silenced, attention focused on the stage. By the time anyone noticed something was wrong, I'd be gone, and the damage would be irreversible. But deletion alone wasn't enough. I needed insurance. Over several nights, I compiled a comprehensive dossier. Screenshots of the original files with timestamps. The SharePoint access logs showing Lana's after-hours visits to my folders. Side-by-side comparisons of my code and her adaptation. Even security camera stills showing her at her desk during times when the files were accessed. Ridgecore's building security was surprisingly easy to hack when you knew the default passwords had never been changed. I saved everything to an encrypted thumb drive, then created an anonymous email account using a VPN and a computer at a 24-hour internet cafe downtown. The email was scheduled to send during the presentation, timed to arrive just as Lana would be taking the stage. Every board member, every department head, every person who mattered would receive irrefutable proof of what she'd done. The physical preparations were simpler. I'd been slowly cleaning out my desk for days, taking home personal items one at a time. A coffee mug on Monday. A photo frame on Wednesday. By Friday, presentation day, my workspace was as impersonal as a hotel room. No one noticed. Why would they pay attention to the invisible woman in the corner? I backed up my legitimate work, the reports and analyses that Ridgecore had actually paid me to create. I wasn't a thief. Then I drafted a resignation letter, brief and professional, citing personal reasons and new opportunities. I printed it on the good paper and sealed it in an envelope addressed to Tom. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy. When colleagues discussed their weekend plans, I nodded and smiled, knowing I'd be 3 states away by Saturday. When Lana stopped by to nervously ask if I'd be attending the presentation, I assured her I wouldn't miss it for the world. "You'll do great," I told her, and meant it. She would do great. For about 17 minutes. I tested the script one final time on Thursday night, running it in a sandboxed environment where it couldn't do any real damage. It performed flawlessly. A beautiful piece of destructive art, clean, efficient, untraceable. I'd even added a function to overwrite the deleted sectors with random data, making recovery virtually impossible without NSA-level resources. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Minneapolis weather that matched my mood perfectly. I dressed carefully, professional but forgettable, the kind of outfit that wouldn't stand out in anyone's memory. I packed my laptop bag with only the essentials: my personal laptop, the thumb drive, and a single red lipstick I'd bought specifically for today. A small vanity in what was otherwise a practical plan. At my desk, I ran through my mental checklist: script uploaded and scheduled, anonymous email queued, resignation letter in my bag, digital footprints covered. All that remained was to wait for the show to begin. I opened my regular work files and pretended to analyze consumer data while the office buzzed with presentation day energy. Catering arrived. AV technicians tested microphones. Executives emerged from their top-floor offices like rare birds descending to mingle with the masses. And through it all, Lana held court, her nervous energy drawing sympathizers and supporters. She'd worn her best suit, the charcoal one that probably cost more than I made in a month. Her presentation slides were already loaded on the main screen, the title slide bearing my idea in her font. 30 minutes to showtime, someone called out. I saved my work, locked my computer, and picked up my bag. Time to position myself for the final act. The main conference hall hummed with anticipation. I chose a seat in the back row, my laptop bag pressed against my legs, phone in hand to monitor the script's execution. The room filled quickly. 200 employees crammed into a space meant for 150. The overflow standing along the walls. Perfect. More witnesses, more chaos when things went wrong. At 2:47 p.m., I opened my laptop one final time and initiated the script. A simple command prompt appeared. Execute deletion protocol. Y ben Ihnen. My finger hovered over the Y key. 6 months of work, my future at Ridgecore, my professional reputation, all balanced on this single keystroke. Lana's laugh carried across the room as she chatted with the CEO near the stage. Confident, radiant, victorious. I pressed Y, protocol initiated, time to completion, 17 minutes. The screen showed a progress bar, elegant in its simplicity. I closed the laptop and slipped it back into my bag. Whatever happened now was beyond my control, and that felt oddly liberating. Welcome, everyone, to Ridgecore's annual Future Forward Challenge, the CEO's voice boomed through the speakers. Today, we celebrate innovation, creativity, and the brilliant minds that will drive our company into the future. I watched the progress on my phone, hidden beneath the conference table, 5% complete. The script was starting with the training data. Gigabytes of consumer information that had taken weeks to compile and clean. Gone in seconds. Our first presenter is Lana Grayson from marketing, with her groundbreaking AI-driven consumer behavior prediction model. Thunderous applause. Lana stepped onto the stage, her confidence filling the room like perfume. She clicked to her first slide, an overview of the project that could have been lifted directly from my initial proposal. 10% complete. Now it was hitting the code libraries, erasing the custom functions that made the algorithm unique. Without them, her remaining presentation files would be calling to dependencies that no longer existed. Thank you all so much, Lana began, her voice carrying perfectly through the wireless mic. What I'm about to show you isn't just a new tool. It's a completely new way of understanding our relationship with consumers. I almost admired her ability to sell my vision so effectively. She had a gift for translation, turning complex concepts into digestible sound bites. If only she'd used that talent honestly. 15%. The test results were disappearing now. Thousands of iterations that proved the concept worked. Each deletion was surgical, taking the data while leaving the folder structure intact. To a casual observer, everything would look normal until they tried to open a file. The key innovation, Lana continued, clicking through slides that showcased my algorithms in prettier packaging, is that we're not just reacting to consumer behavior, we're anticipating it, shaping it, creating a dialogue between data and desire. 25%. The script had found her derivative files now, the ones where she'd copied my work and tried to make it her own. These deletions would be particularly satisfying, her improvements vanishing like smoke. My phone buzzed. The anonymous email had been sent. In exactly 3 minutes, when Lana reached the technical demonstration portion of her presentation. 200 inbox notifications would light up across the room, but I wouldn't be here to see it. I stood quietly, picking up my bag with practiced casualness. A few people glanced my way, but most were fixated on Lana's performance. She was good, I had to admit. The stage loved her in a way it would never love me. 35% complete. The core algorithm files were being shredded now, the heart of Project Mercury torn out bite by bite. I wondered how long it would take her to notice. Would she try to run a live demonstration? The thought almost made me smile. I slipped out the back door just as Lana announced. Now, let me show you this revolutionary system in action. The hallway was deserted, everyone packed into the presentation. My footsteps echoed on the polished floor as I made my way to the IT department. The deletion script showed 50% on my phone, 8 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. The IT office was empty except for one junior technician monitoring the servers. He barely looked up when I placed my ID badge on the counter. Heading out, he asked, more from habit than interest. Yeah, not feeling well. He nodded, already turning back to his screens. No reason to suspect anything. No alerts firing yet. The script was too well crafted for that. I left the building through the parking garage, the November air sharp against my face, 65% complete. Lana would be deep into her technical explanation now, perhaps starting to notice that some of her demo links weren't working quite right. My car started on the first try, a good omen. I pulled out of the garage just as my phone showed 75%. The anonymous email would have landed by now. Phones vibrating in pockets and purses, curious glances at screens despite the presentation etiquette. I imagined the first person to open it, seeing the evidence laid out with prosecutorial precision. The timestamps, the access logs, the side-by-side code comparisons, questions forming behind polite faces, whispers starting in the back rows. 85% complete. By the time I merged onto I-94, heading east toward Wisconsin, the script showed 95%. Almost done. 342 files reduced to digital ash, along with any hope Lana had of maintaining her fiction. At exactly 3:04 p.m., as I passed the Minneapolis city limits, my phone displayed the final message. Protocol complete. 342 files deleted. Have a nice day. I powered off the phone and removed the SIM card, tossing it out the window into the gray afternoon. Behind me, Ridgecore Analytics was probably descending into chaos. Ahead of me, the highway stretched toward whatever came next. I'd lost my job, my project, my naive faith in corporate meritocracy. But I'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that justice doesn't always come from systems and policies and proper channels. Sometimes you have to code your own. The road hummed beneath my tires. 300 miles to Chicago, where a friend from college ran a startup that valued talent over politics. I'd already sent her my real portfolio, the work that belonged to me alone. Lana had stolen my idea, so I deleted her future. Fair trade. The news reached me through LinkedIn 3 days later. I'd set up a new profile under my full name, Natalie Elizabeth Shaw, and was casually browsing when I saw the first post from a former Ridgecore colleague. Shocking developments at Ridgecore Analytics today. Integrity matters, folks. Corporate ethics. Truth wins. No details, but the comments section was ablaze with speculation. I scrolled past, maintaining my digital distance. By day 5, the tech blogs had picked up the story. Data disaster at Ridgecore. Future Forward winner stripped of prize following plagiarism scandal. The article was sparse on technical details but rich in corporate drama. Lana Grayson, rising star, had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The Future Forward challenge had been suspended indefinitely. Anonymous sources suggested significant data loss had complicated the investigation. I read the news from a coffee shop in Milwaukee, my laptop open to 3 job applications. My hands didn't shake anymore. My sleep had returned, deep and dreamless. Week 2 brought more revelations. A former colleague, someone I'd barely spoken to, sent me a Facebook message. Holy shit, Natalie. Was it you? Everyone's freaking out. Lana's gone, like completely gone. Cleaned out her desk at night with security watching. They say she tried to blame you, but the evidence was overwhelming. I didn't respond. Natalie Shaw from Ridgecore didn't exist anymore. The official statement came out after 3 weeks, buried in a Friday afternoon press release. Ridgecore Analytics announced leadership changes and a renewed commitment to intellectual property protection. No mention of the Future Forward Challenge. No mention of missing data. Certainly no mention of the junior analyst who'd vanished the same day everything fell apart. Corporate amnesia at its finest. I learned the full scope from Marcus, the only Ridgecore friend who'd bothered to find my new number. We met at a diner halfway between Chicago and Minneapolis, neutral ground for old war stories. It was fucking beautiful, he said, shaking his head over coffee and pie. The presentation was going perfectly, and then phones started buzzing. That email, Jesus, Natalie. The screenshots, the access logs, the code comparisons. It was like watching a prosecutor lay out a murder case. I wouldn't know, I said carefully. I left before the presentation ended. He grinned. Sure you did. Well, whoever sent it, they destroyed her. But the real chaos came when she tried to run the demo. Nothing worked. Files missing, dependencies broken. She stood there clicking through error messages while the CEO's face went from confused to furious. The pie was apple, tart enough to make my mouth water. I took another bite, letting him fill the silence. They launched a full investigation. Brought in external auditors, cybersecurity experts, the works. Lana tried to spin it, said you must have sabotaged her after being rejected. But the metadata didn't lie. Every stolen file traced back to her access logs, dated weeks before she submitted the project. Must have been embarrassing. Embarrassing? They had to notify 3 major clients that their predictive analytics projects were delayed indefinitely. Stock price dipped 2%. Board called an emergency meeting. Heads rolled all the way up to the CTO. I thought about Project Mercury. My beautiful algorithm now scattered to the digital wind. The loss still ached, but it was a clean pain, like a properly set bone. What about the data? I asked. Were they able to recover anything? Marcus snorted. That's the beautiful part. Whoever did this, and I'm not saying it was you, they did it right. Professional data recovery firms couldn't salvage shit. Lana had been so paranoid about protecting her project that she disabled the automatic backups for those folders. IT only discovered it during the investigation. The irony was delicious enough to make me smile. Her paranoia about me stealing back my own work had created the very vulnerability I'd exploited. She's unemployable now, Marcus continued. Word travels fast in Minneapolis tech. LinkedIn shows her as seeking new opportunities. But everyone knows you can't come back from something like that. We finished our meal in comfortable silence. As we prepared to leave, Marcus slid a flash drive across the table. What's this? Your recommendation letters. From me, from Roberto. Yeah, the janitor. He noticed more than you think, and from a few others who knew what really happened. Clean versions, no mention of the drama. Just talking about your brilliant analytical mind and innovative approaches to data science. The gesture threatened to crack my carefully maintained composure. I pocketed the drive, nodding my thanks. What's next for you? He asked as we walked to our cars. I've got some interviews lined up. Smaller companies, mostly. Places where the work matters more than the politics. You'll land on your feet. You're too smart not to. He paused at his car door. For what it's worth, everyone in analytics knew that project was yours. We didn't know how to help. I know, I said, and meant it. Systems protect themselves, not individuals. I'd learned that lesson in the most visceral way possible. As I drove back to Chicago, I thought about Project Mercury one last time. Somewhere in the digital ether, its ghost might still linger, a function here, a concept there, scattered across the memories of those who'd seen its brief, stolen glory. But the complete vision lived only in my mind now. And that's where it would stay. Let someone else chase the spotlight. I'd learned to appreciate the shadows. 6 months later, I'm writing this from a small cafe in Portland, Oregon. The rain taps against the windows in a rhythm that no algorithm could predict. And I find comfort in its randomness. My laptop screen shows clean code, a new project for a startup that values innovation over hierarchy. They hired me for my mind, not my ability to play politics. I don't use social media much anymore, but occasionally I search for updates. Ridgecore Analytics restructured, implementing new security protocols and collaborative innovation guidelines that would make independent work nearly impossible. They learned the wrong lesson, as corporations always do, treating the symptom rather than the disease. Lana Grayson disappeared from the tech scene entirely. Last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown, working in real estate. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about that day, about the 17 minutes when her stolen future evaporated. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. The interesting thing about revenge is how little it changes. I thought destroying her would heal something in me, would restore the balance. Instead, it simply closed a chapter. The satisfaction was real but finite, like solving a complex equation, momentarily thrilling. Then just another completed problem. Project Mercury died that day in Minneapolis. But its DNA lives on in my new work. Better, stronger. Protected by lawyers and contracts instead of just passwords and hope. I learned to guard my brilliance as carefully as any trade secret. Because in the end, our ideas are all we truly own. My new colleagues know me as Beth, a nickname no one at Ridgecore ever used. They see me as friendly but private. Brilliant but careful. They don't know about the 342 files, about the woman who stood on a stage presenting my dreams, about the script that ran while applause filled a conference room. And that's fine. Some stories are meant to be lived, not told. The cafe is filling with the afternoon crowd. Freelancers, students, other refugees from corporate America. We work in parallel isolation, each tending our own digital gardens. No one steals here. There's an unspoken honor code among the displaced. I've been asked if I regret it. The deletion, the bridge burning, the nuclear option. The answer changes depending on the day. When I'm deep in flow, building something new and entirely mine, I feel nothing but clean satisfaction. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder what Project Mercury could have become with proper support and recognition. The truth is simpler than any algorithm. I don't regret protecting myself. I regret that I had to. My coffee's gone cold. But the code on my screen glows with possibility. Another function defined, another problem solved. This time, every line belongs to me, saved in triply redundant backups that Lana Grayson, or anyone like her, will never touch. I didn't get my idea back. But I made sure no one else could use it either. Sometimes that's the best justice we can code for ourselves. The rain continues its ancient algorithm against the glass. Somewhere in Minneapolis, 342 files stay deleted, a digital graveyard marking where ambition met consequences. And here in Portland, I build new things from the ashes of old dreams, wiser and warier, but still creating. Because that's what we do. Those of us who survive corporate betrayal, we adapt, we evolve, we write better code, and we never, ever trust the shared drive again. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where in the world are you listening to this? Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace betrayal, justice, or just coding life. Have you ever had to choose between being right and being employed? I'd love to hear your experiences.